Board members, please return to the table.
Tough guy. Oh, tough.
Board members, please come to the table. Okay, come.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, we have Title I. Okay, thank you very much. All right, now we have the Title I Parent Advisory Committee Annual Report. Thank you very much. You're on.
Thank you. Good evening, school board members. I'd like to make some introductions. We have Deanna Doan, who is our chairperson for the Title I Parent Advisory Committee and a parent at Herndon Elementary School. All right, we got some thumbs up. That's always a good sign. Next to me is Mike Waltz, who is a member at large and also a parent at Belvedere Elementary School. I would also like to mention that Belvedere is our National Title I Distinguished School for this school year. Yes. It is only one of 2 recognized in the state and one of 100 in the United States for exceptional student achievement. So I thought I'd give that plug to Mike and his school, Belvedere Elementary. From our staff.
And that's in my district.
Yes.
And
And Mike also has a child at Wayanoke Elementary School. Anybody here representing Wayanoke?
Wayanoke.
Okay, very good. From staff, we have Yvonne Denome, who is our Title I manager, fairly recent to Fairfax County Public Schools, and we stole her from Loudon. It does happen. And then we also have Renee LaHuffman-Jackson, who is our Family and School Partnerships Coordinator. And so with that, I'd just like to make a couple of points before I turn things over to Mike. We were really excited to hear the FCP report earlier this evening because we have so many connections. Title I has so many connections to FCP. First of all, Title I funds 12 FCP classrooms across Fairfax County Public Schools. And when they were talking about the wait list for students who didn't make it into the FCP classrooms, wanted to let you know that we provide early childhood programming through Family and School Partnerships. We serve over 700 students and 700 parents through our HIPPY and early literacy programs. I mention that to you because we do serve a need. It's certainly not the same way we would serve children in a preschool classroom, but we are providing quality instruction for our kids. And tonight you're going to hear from our TPAC board about this topic of family engagement, which is so very important to Title I. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Mike.
Actually, going to start with Deanna.
I have been the chair this year. This is my last year with a student in a Title I school. So as all good handoffs should go, right, we're going to do a smooth passing of the baton, and Mike's going to, both in his capacity as the vice chair for this year and the chair-elect for next year, he's going to give the briefing this evening. So.
Thank you, and thank you all. I will only make probably 3 to 5 jokes about the start time, one of which, at this time, shouldn't we be allowed to go behind the door and get some of the pulled pork? When you brought that out, I said, pulled pork and coleslaw. No, never mind, I'm doing vegan right now. Okay, so recommendation 6 was covered. Okay, so I'm going to walk through, you all have read the report, I'm going to walk through the recommendations, the thought processes behind it. Really proud of the work that our group has done. And looking through the recommendations and our discussions we had around them, a lot of them support goals in the strategic plan, and I'll reference them as we go through them. So the first recommendation is increased leadership through continued professional development for parent liaisons, validating them as the key interface between parents and the school community. This will further enable them to better assist families in Title I schools. This supports the strategic plan goals of premier workforce and caring culture. So we've had quite a lot of discussion, and we had parent liaisons at several meetings, and we've come to the point where we want to make sure that there's investment in the position, the people in this role, they get full time with benefits, because to get the best talent, you have to make it enticing for them, something attractive for them. We often have deficits when you don't have a full-time parent liaison, because suppose you need somebody for a day to communicate with the parent and then they're gone. Then there's a gap and you have to start over. Want to make sure that there's rigorous professional development. We saw data about the number of trainings that are available. Recall maybe 1 or 2 were mandatory, the rest were optional. We think that more should be mandatory because it has to be vital information that they're missing by not going to them. Whatever that structure is like, that's, up to you, and maybe a discussion with some parent liaisons now about how they could best serve them, but there needs to be more regular professional development. We've noticed that at a lot of schools, if there is a special language focus, such as a Spanish-speaking parent liaison, you may have through no intent of their own.
There's your pulled pork with coleslaw.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm just bringing out, it's a little late, but we're going to still get it all done. Here's some dessert for you. You can pass around. Okay, that's parent involvement.
We love our superintendent.
Absolutely. Now the smells are throwing me off, and I'll bring it back. If they speak a particular language, or if they help communicate with families in a language, sometimes there's a disconnect with other families. It may be implied, probably never said or expressed, but there may be a thought, well, they speak Spanish, so maybe they're not for us. Maybe they're not really here for us. And it seems to be organic, but again, not intentional, and we think with more rigorous and pointed development and instruction to the parent liaisons, they will be more mindful as they go around in the school that you're not just here for these families. Yes, they have a great need, but don't forget the other 150 to 200 families as well. We want to make sure that there's resources for them to communicate with families, whether that's texting or emailing, maybe most convenient, but pursuant to either county or school policies, it may not be authorized. Perhaps we can consult with them for the best practices, the best way that they can reach families, because they will often have a closer relationship, with the families than, parent advocates or just parent leaders, PTA members per se. And we want to have uniformity and standardization with the job responsibilities and distinguish what they can do, what they're allowed to do, what they should not do. Again, this would likely come with a lot of input and feedback from them on areas they can see they can provide more value than they currently are, things that may not be helping things that are. But we really want to make that position, bring it up to a level of not just a family support, but a professional Fairfax County employee who has all the credentials, training, and competency to deal with a myriad of issues. The second recommendation, encourage principals and our vice principals to attend at least one TPAC meeting each year and to incorporate the TPAC role into their interactions with staff and parents. This will encourage TPAC participation, strengthen a relationship with school administration, and bring more value to the parents in the school community. Now, I want to go back a little bit about the evolution of this committee itself. When I was first acquainted with it, it was called the District Advisory Council. $20 to anybody who knows what that means when you hear it. The first meeting I was at, I actually, in the exit ticket, I think I said, I'm not really sure what we're supposed to be doing. And it concerned the Title I staff member at the time. We had a meeting, we talked about it. And the reason why it wasn't to denigrate or put down the process, it's really, I don't understand. And if I don't understand it, how can I tell anybody else? If we don't understand something, how can we relay or recommend anything of value to other people? Over time, and I've kind of perfected an elevator pitch when people ask what the TPAC is, well, we changed the name so it's something that would communicate, even if you know exactly what we do, it communicates enough. Title I, okay, certain schools have that classification. Parent, okay, parents are on this advisory committee. They may not know we work with the school board, but they can understand that parents are involved in this. So when people ask me what we do, I say we identify and leverage resources for families in Title I schools. That's essentially what we do. In many ways, it's quick, it's easy, it's something you don't have to memorize really because it just rolls off the tongue, at least mine. And hopefully more people can start to incorporate some variation of that to let people know what we do. And when you have that clarity, increases understanding throughout all the potential stakeholders. There's been a lot of turnover in administrators, a lot of new principals and vice principals the past few years. A lot of them probably have gaps in understanding or awareness of this. This recommendation was not born of any particular meeting. It's really something that came about organically in the process through relaying information back to principals, to PTAs, and just kind of light bulb went off. It's like, hold on, this committee is populated by principals who will recommend a parent to serve on the committee. If you saw the end of the report that shows the attendance, we have 48 Title I schools. I think the most we ever had at one meeting was 21. There's many never had attendance. I would put good money that many principals really don't even know what we do. They have a lot of responsibilities, they have a lot of things going on. This needs to be a more vital component of the Title I programming as they relate it to families and as they engage and work with, welcoming and engaging families overall, not just identifying folks to be in this committee, but the families in the schools that they're serving. Now, Title I is it's an elementary school classification, but if the funding was there, we would have Title I middle schools and high schools because the kids aren't going off to college after 5th grade. They're moving on to they're feeding into larger bodies. And there's a connection between principals from elementary school to middle school to high school. There's a program, and back when there was daylight, they snuck in here early. Came in here earlier because I asked them something to be here. There's a group that not only embodies all of the attributes of Portrait of a Graduate, but it also supports 2 of the strategic plan goals of student success and caring culture called Homework Helpers. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's a high school student initiated mentoring program where middle school students will tutor elementary school students. They did a presentation for our executive board in the previous school year and the full committee. They've been at various PTAs. In order to make it something more scalable and more reachable to everybody, they put together an infomercial, like a 1-minute infomercial and a 7-minute YouTube video that goes through their whole program with the graphics, shows the statistics. Their goal is to have this program in all 48 Title I schools. Their big challenge is that they're not getting traction in the middle schools. If we only have 21 at most principals, not principals, 21 at most representatives at a meeting, how are the principals know about this program where they can leverage their relationships with middle school principals and within their own communities? Another challenge, which I think would be pretty easy to address once there's enough knowledge and awareness, is getting transportation to get the middle school tutors to the elementary schools. But I really think the big part is bringing in middle schools as a partner and going into their school community and finding those students and parents who can help. I actually met with them over the weekend a few weeks ago because the kids were getting frustrated. And it's sad that when kids are doing the things that we want them to do, even beyond what we expect them to do, we as adults are letting them down. So I wanted them, to at least be acknowledged for what they're doing, but also to let them know we're going to help them help us, because that's what really they're doing. And it's not just for the elementary school students who are getting help in areas they need. They're getting to interact with somebody a few years older who can really appreciate and understand what they were going through. When we think about the transitory years of middle school, whether it's 6 to 8 or 7th to 8th grade, self-esteem, hormones, things are going on. We often find value in ourselves and we can deliver it to others. What it does for these middle school kids who are able to be a role model and have somebody depending on them and looking up to them. We can't really measure that, but we know what the impact could be. The fact that our meetings are not only, they're in one location, but it's also something people can attend virtually. We try to remove any barriers that someone could have to participating. And when we have larger attendance, personal and virtual, you'll find that it's going to be driven by schools that are engaged with the work that we do. And that's going to come from the top. If a principal does not know what we do, if they're not at our meetings, they don't get the flavor of it. Every meeting we have, whether it's a well attended or not, the discussion is always engaging, thought-provoking. There's not empty time. We usually have to cut ourselves off because we have so many ideas and strategies, that are circulating. If they market this not as, I need someone to be on this committee, but we have an opportunity in a Title I school in this county to work directly with school board, make recommendations how to improve the education and the experiences of kids in these schools. We can only have one representative per school. Who would like to do that? That's a much different picture than nominating somebody for something they don't really know what they're nominating them for. So in order to strengthen our committee, where more ideas, more strategies, more solutions will come from, but in turn, the engagement of families at all these schools, we need to have principals become a more entrenched part of the process. Those that have attended our meetings in the past 2 years, they've really appreciated it. They've been engaged participants, and this recommendation, serves to anchor that and just make it stronger. Recommendation 3, develop a grant writing guide, including a compilation of potential grant sources to increase capacity for PTAs to apply for and receive funding to enhance the programming at their respective schools. This supports the strategic plan goal of resource stewardship. Budgets are always, in every capacity, it seems it's an issue. It's a challenge. There's money out there that we're not aware of that just with some knowledge, a little bit of lead time, we can get, which will make huge differences in our schools. Everyone knows that everyone at this table at least knows that $500 to $700 is a field trip. Getting a grant doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out, heavily researched, well in advance. There was residual grant money from FCC, PTA, and Whole Foods. I only found out about it because someone in the front office sent me an email about it, and another member of our committee actually mentioned it. But I applied for the grant for the Watchdogs program. Most of you are probably familiar, Dads of Great Students. And we started at Wayne Oak this year and want to expand it. and was able to get $500, and it filled out a page. Now, granted, when they asked what the cost would be, I had it line for line for line for line, and when they said they had too many requests and we had to prioritize, I had all that down there, but it took me about 20 minutes, and $500 came in. But it was just a matter if I didn't get that email, and I get a lot of emails, but if I didn't know about that one, I would have missed out. There's also a Target field trip grant, which a lot of teachers aren't aware of. Again, $500 to $700 is a field trip at school. The Business and Community Partnerships Office, they were at the previous school year agenda they presented. It was like a 30,000-foot level. There were some powerful results that could happen, but it was a lot of legwork and was still not clear for us. The presentation we had on grants was you could pick it up and you could start researching it the next day. You could apply for grants. A lot of them were very simple. Don't take a long time. You don't have to have a certain level of, writing expertise, but you're able to bring in money to your school and make an immediate impact. If there was a way that there was some source that not just schools and PTAs and just families could access for grants, that would help to address a lot of the budgetary problems that we have. Recommendation 4, continue to expand the availability of FCPS resources and programs available at all Title I schools. Many resources are available at the Parent Resource Center, but may not be accessible to working parents or those without transportation. This supports the strategic plan goal of caring culture. Not even all teachers are aware of the existence, much less parents. We got a tour from them 1 or 2 years ago, and it does have a lot of resources. Hours are not ideal, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, there is access through online. You can get an interlibrary loan, but again, if we don't know this exists, we don't know what we're going on to look for. We have some suggestions of ways to increase awareness. Maybe as part of that recommendation 1, connect our parent liaisons, or better connect them if they already are, to the Parent Resource Center. Something maybe like a bookmobile, something that can visit local schools to increase engagement, give them a preview of what the Parent Resource Center has. At the division or pyramid resource fair that happens in the summer, we get supplies. Maybe if there's a station set up for the Parent Resource Center, and families would know going into the year, this is a place that we can go. We can get these books without having to go there. We can get it through our school. And 5th recommendation, and we really do need the school board to approve this, is we recommend the following charge for the 2018-19 school year. I'm going to jump back to the previous charge that we've had for the past 2 years, which is identify and cultivate key human and technology resources to increase family and community engagement in Title I schools by fostering parent leadership and advocacy across demographics and strengthening cultural proficiency among school staff. It's a lot. Try to get it all in one breath. It's a lot. We feel that we have fleshed that out and in the process really honed in on the areas that we can most impact Title I schools. So we're asking for you to approve this new charge to increase the engagement of parents with their school communities, explore ways to maximize the impact of school-based family engagement teams through identification and propagation of best practices and established programs, and connect with parents outside of school boundaries in programs such as through culturally relevant community resources. Part 1 of that recommendation is recognizing what is successful, examining ways to increase and expand it. Part 2, engagement like a friendship, if you want to think about that. I'm sure you've had friendships with folks who you feel like, well, I'm managing this whole friendship myself. I'm doing it all. I don't want to keep managing a friendship. It takes 2 people. Engagement is the same way. Oftentimes, the popular conventional thought is engagement is how do we get people to come out? What about coming to them? We need to come to them, whether it's houses of worship, community activities, sporting events, having traveling, rotating PTA meetings. I have one really personal, strong example of engagement. My son's 2nd grade teacher, the first week of school, during the meeting, before school started, during the meet and greet, I mentioned to her that 2 of his other classmates were on the same soccer team. So she said, yeah, I'll definitely come out to a game. So this is the first week of school. She came out. Now another student at his school, one of his good friends, she taught the previous summer in Young Scholars. She brought orange slices for the whole team. She brought each of the boys a water bottle with their name on it, a little soccer ball. Now, I don't know if any of them have made it through the end of the year actually having it. My son might have been the longest holdout. He did chew the top, and I had to order another one. But anyways, that's week one. My son just told us last week he made up this story about how she asked if she could tutor him over the summer just because he wants to spend more time with her. He's a great reader, because I asked her about it. She goes, yeah, he said something about helping him read. She's like, he can read very well. But that's how you reach somebody. You come to where they are, and you see them do what they're doing. This charge better represents the recommendations that we have and the direction that we need to go. We've been able to flesh out a lot of things over the past few years, and these are the areas we think that we can make the greatest impact. And all of these recommendations and this charge will further the four main goals of the strategic plan, which is student success, caring culture, premier workforce, and resource stewardship. I do want to give thanks to the Title I office, who make it very easy for me to just come in and talk, run my mouth. They do a great job supporting us. And also to our outgoing chair, Deanna Doan, who just from coming from Herndon alone and fighting 495 would be enough reasons, but in really leading us through what I think at the time was a good and well-intentioned but amorphous group to a very focused, laser-focused, and really distilling down to the issues that we can make the greatest impact over the past 5 years. Welcome any of your questions and comments.
Great, thank you very much. And once again, it's also very nice that you have recommended your charge for next year. We appreciate that. I have Mr. Moon, Ms. Corbett Sanders, Ms. Keys Kamara so far, Ms. Evans, and then anybody else as we go along. So, Mr. Moon.
I wasn't sure whether I raised my hand, but since I have a floor, that I would really appreciate you mentioning about defining more clearly the role of parent liaisons, because I appreciate all that they do, but at the same time, I'm concerned whether they are adequately trained enough to do everything that people may perceive they would be doing, translating, even playing the role of teachers, counselors, course selections, being a social workers, just everything to everybody out there. So, sometimes we may be expecting too much out of them, and also whether we may not be creating sort of a liability on the part of school system to not drawing line more clearly what they are supposed to be doing, where the limits are.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked a lot about was, I think we put professional development in here, but really leadership development as well, right? So that they can start to extend their reach and use other resources, whether it's parent volunteers or, better kind of organizing their family engagement teams and kind of playing that central role. That's a mature professional leader skill set, right? And they're not always coming in with that. And I don't know if we're investing in them in that way.
So I wonder if Renee Jackson might comment on, the professional development that the parent liaisons receive, but also the myriad roles that they play within the school system.
We have a parent liaison handbook that clearly defines and outlines the roles and responsibilities of our parent liaisons. And we provide professional development monthly to our parent liaisons through our office. And some of them are required and others are not required because as hourly employees, we have to pay them. And oftentimes, principals do not want to release them from their schools to attend our professional development opportunities. So that is one barrier. We try to set aside funds for that professional development, but having it required is very difficult for us because we have to pay them for their time, for their professional development time.
We've found, I mean, they've come to our meetings on their own time too, and I'm not suggesting that they get their training on their own time, but my point in bringing that up is simply that they are invested in this. They want to do a better job, and this has been a common refrain for us over the 5 years that I've been at this table. Right, is that this is a professional role in our schools, and we need to value it as such.
Okay, thank you. Next I have Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
Mr. Moon, thank you for bringing up the parent liaisons, because I too am thrilled to see this as your number one recommendation, because the parent liaisons are often the heart of our communities, and they have a way of touching our parents in a way that a more formal structure of a principal or formal role of the principal or assistant principal, they're not going to feel comfortable with. But that professional development piece is key, and we often don't focus on professional development. We figure once people are in the job, then they've got it. And so having clear metrics and expectations for professional development, I think, is an excellent recommendation, as well as having a full-time parent liaison in each one of our Title I schools. That also is important. Along the lines of our Title I schools, I'd love to hear from you your expectation or your impression. We moved the threshold for Title I this year up to 45%, really because of resources and availability of resources. Would love to understand from you what you think the impact of that is, and what type of transitional services we need to offer to our Title I schools that may not be Title I going forward. That'd be my first question. I have a couple others, but if you want to answer that one first.
So I can respond to the transitional resources and supports we're providing for the two schools who will no longer qualify as Title I in the 18-19 school year. So we are providing a full-time instructional coach to each of those schools. That's outside of Title I funding. Additionally, we're providing extensive professional development during the summer using carry-forward funding from Title I. So the schools will be involved in a math symposium for our Title I teachers. They will be involved in literacy symposium, and we provide funding for teachers to meet following the literacy symposium to plan out the new learning that they have received through the PD, and to begin to plan out as teams what they're going to do and how they're going to apply that learning back in their classrooms.
And I think that's really important, but what we're talking about tonight is the parent advisory piece, and that's the piece that I would love to understand, is how we are supporting the parents in those schools that are transitioning out of Title I, because I think we need to ensure that the parents understand that the supports are there, they just are changing in how they look and feel.
And I don't know if we have, which two schools are transitioning out?
It's Coates and Saratoga.
Okay, so I know we haven't had anybody from Saratoga. We may have had somebody from Coates engaged. This is, back to that challenge, right, where not all the voices are represented, and I think that's one of our moving on goals, to try to get more schools represented. So, having not been affected at Herndon by that, I can't speak to what the parents' concerns may be coming out of it. Our experience in general has been that so many parents don't really understand Title I. They don't understand that is our first task. We spend our first session every year just educating the representative on what Title I is, what it means, what the committee does, what the funding does, all of that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the parents are only vaguely aware, and if they, I'm just going to say, might see it as kind of a good thing that they're graduating from Title I or something. Mm-hmm. That would be, it's a conjecture on my part, but it's unfortunately can be perceived as a negative, when the reality is, if you're anywhere close to that threshold, you want to be on the Title I side of that line and getting those additional resources. So would you add anything?
Yes, and I remember, and I saw them at both Belvedere and Wayno PTA meetings. It was almost like a joint presentation where the principals kind of went through some Title I and then teed up for me to talk about the TPAC. it's too much, and it was during an executive board PTA meeting. It might surprise you to know I do more than just this, as many of us do. The principal rattled off like 5, 6 things, like very specific, tangible about Title I. Smaller class sizes up to 3rd grade, extra instructional coach, extra reading coach, money they can spend. Just things that parents don't hear. We go through the slides, they talk about this and that, but give them something they can take home, talk about, and appreciate. That's part of, this is kind of a undocumented, unlisted recommendation for maybe how to get parents to appreciate what Title I offers more. Mm-hmm. Because I told her, I said, if you could package that up and tell everybody, I said, because I've been doing this for years, I said, that's the first time I heard something so clear what the benefit and advantage is of Title I. That alone, letting people know what exactly they're getting, will let folks know what they're losing. Some folks probably don't know what they're losing because they didn't know what they had in the first place. All they think, they're on free and reduced lunches. That's just a classification. It has nothing to do with all the resources and advantages they get. So for those that, again, we don't have any connection to them, but I would, if they even knew what does Title I have, what are you going to lose, and then they could at least identify what areas where gaps they need to fill and address as they transition.
Thank you. And then just real quick, because I know we're late in the evening, and I very much appreciate you all sticking with us tonight and sticking with us for as many years as you have been in support of this very important work. It's greatly appreciated. I'm going to throw out an idea for you. The homework helpers, I've actually introduced to a couple of our middle schools, and they are using them. They are trying to get their clubs going in their own schools and reaching out to the elementary. But we also have something called Grand Involve. And Grand Involve has been a wonderful asset to the Title I schools in the Mount Vernon and now Lee area.
We have it at Wayne too. Just started this year.
Excellent. So thank you very much.
So you're saying Grand Involve to assist homework helpers?
I think they may be a good intro to those schools that have been a little reluctant for the homework helpers. Mm-hmm. I have had a couple of schools go, it's that much more administrative work, is if they can help open the door and say, these kids are great and what they're doing is fantastic.
Yeah, so I think that would feed right into that first part of our charge for next year. What we want to do is do a better job of identifying watchdogs and Grand Involve and homework helpers and just making sure that all of our Title I schools even know that they're out there and know how to implement them and finding those really effective programs and propagating them.
And the fact they come at so little cost, relatively speaking, and the impact, you cannot put into, you can put into hours from a watchdog program, $500 essentially to start it up. But if you have 20 volunteers, that's 140 volunteer hours.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Corbett-Sanders, I also wanted to share with you about the parent involvement question. As we look at our parent liaisons for next year, we did not change that threshold. So while we did change the threshold in terms of which schools qualify for Title I, the percentage of free and reduced in combination with the ESOL did not change. So as an example, Coates is actually receiving additional parent liaison hours and will have a contracted person next year. So we were mindful of the fact that while we were looking at the Title I and the challenge we had in terms of the monies coming from federal government, we didn't want to change that with regards to the parent liaison service. So that factor did not change.
We appreciated that at Coates, by the way. Okay, I have Ms. Keys-Kamara, Ms. Evans, and Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Keys-Kamara.
Well, first, I thank you guys for your hard work. I have had the pleasure of attending one of your meetings, and it is true, the conversation does have to be cut off. So, just real quickly, I'll start at the end. I really love recommendation. I love all your recommendations. Really would love to work more closely with you in implementing recommendation 5, and talking about ways to do that. That parent, engaging parents is really key. And I think Grand involved, all of those things, homework helpers, I've met with them, introduced them, Dr. Braybrand, I think. And I don't want to say the wrong name, and it's too late for me to remember it. But I did introduce them to somebody. You're familiar with homework helpers, yes?
I've heard of it.
Okay. We can talk about it later. I don't want to belabor the point, but I hate to hear that they're discouraged. They're their own little startup group and have created this tutorial service that they're offering, and they need help with things like transportation and things like that. So, but they've been very successful, and they have their own, as he said, YouTube. I was very impressed. So I hope that we can figure out some ways, but I won't try to do that today. With respect to professional development, that's another, I think, real key. And I just want to ask, have we tried to utilize things like, I know the videos have been available, online training and things like that. Are those available to our parent liaisons?
We can definitely provide webinars, professional development. This year we did do our trauma-informed, face-to-face professional development for our parent liaisons because we felt that was very important for them to have that professional development.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction, and I thank you guys for pushing us on that road.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your excellent report. I always love to hear what you have to say at the end of the year. And Mike, thank you for representing not one but two schools. That's very much appreciated. I'm going to start with that. I see that a couple of the principals put themselves in there. Was that because they couldn't find people? Did they actually come and attend your meeting? I see a couple of names that I recognize where it wasn't a parent put in there. It was the principal himself or herself.
Was that for one meeting or
I'm just looking at the West Lawn, Sleepy Hollow. The people listed here are actually the principals. So I don't know if that was an indication that they weren't able to find parents to attend.
It's possible. There were some that I know well into the year. We still had a few holes that had not been filled. So it's perhaps, they put the principal's name in there. If
just
they
as a hold, yeah.
Conjecturing.
And I guess I would hope that in future everybody could find a parent. And I understand people are strapped for time, but and I hear what you say about wanting the principals to come themselves
so that they understand.
It too. Yep. Thank you again for recognizing the critical role of parent liaisons. I know that's been a long-standing issue for your group, as well as the board has now recognized this too. And this was something that you had brought to us earlier, and we have gone a long way to putting them on a scale and getting them under contract. I think you make a very good point about professional development too. They are professionals and they're critical to our schools. So anything that we can do to further that piece of it, I think that's certainly a worthwhile suggestion there. The grant writing guide, that's a marvelous idea, and I would think that would be, famous last words here, but relatively simple to do. You found that when you actually sat down to write a grant, it wasn't as difficult as perhaps you thought when you started the process. But were you kind of on your own? Did you feel like you were on your own?
Well, I'm not afraid of writing, so it's not a problem for me. But just learning about it, being made aware of that particular grant that was still available, and seeing that was just clicking on FCC PTA. It's one page, fill the stuff out. I mean, I'm sure there's other grants that are around that level of complexity that people just don't know about. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the grant writing guide, the person who did the presentation, Stacey Evers, she's the environmental educator at Belvedere.
Right.
She's
marvelous.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I think this one landed better with us is because it's boots on the ground. It's, grassroots. We're doing it ourselves.
Okay.
Something that is very approachable for teachers, parents alike, who can really make use of it. And I could talk to her about it, but if you want me to forward what her PowerPoint, it's spectacular. From what it's like, take off some personal identification, but if you want to use that as a jumping off point and then, have, it as a resource, because it's comprehensive.
And I would think that most people doing it for the first time would be intimidated just by the process, no matter who they were, just because they don't know where they're going with it, like with anything the first time. So I think that's a great recommendation. And, I'm, the idea about the perception, that's something we could talk about and probably should talk about at great length, not just about Title I schools, but about certain schools. And we, as a school system, as a school board, really need to do some myth busting about that, because these schools are marvelous schools, and the idea that some people think that it's that being a Title I school is somehow a negative, that's a perception we really need to counter. So thank you for raising that in such a straightforward way, and thank you for all your work.
We were picking up some ideas even tonight about a Facebook group. Like, maybe we should do a Facebook group. And shame on me for not thinking of it. I come out of the intelligence community, so I'm a little social media shy. But that little things like that, right? That's where people go to look for, like, oh, what is Title I, right? And if they were to find a positive, engaging community where we could educate and learn, maybe, we can do a better, you can do a better job of, you can take it from here, right? But I think there might be some simple ways that we can kind of push that ball along as well.
And I think a lot of principals, we had principals at that particular meeting that we had, it was like one discussion topic is, it was what kind of negative stereotypes you hear about Title I? And so we kind of just rattled off the things that people think. And that's kind of the jumping off point and really got into our thinking about how we need to rebrand that, address those concerns. I mean, people are playing keep away with their kids because there's too many brown or black, non-white children in schools without having any idea of the quality of instruction, the resources, and the sense of community that's engendered there.
I could not agree with you more. That is something that and we need to address that straight on.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. Derenick-Koufax.
So one of the things I was looking at in relation and support to your report and your recommendations is the NEA, the National Education Association, reiterates again that when you look at the ongoing research, family engagement in schools improves student achievement, reduces absenteeism, restores parent confidence in their children's education. Students with involved parents and caregivers earn higher grades and test scores, have better social skills, and show improved behavior. And that, to me, is what's being captured up here, where I'm just so impressed and so pleased with your presentation here tonight, because it is one of the critical factors that I still think we are not doing a good enough job in helping our families understand the tremendous role they can play. From a very personal level, I know how much it influenced my family's history. My grandparents were immigrants. They didn't even have a grade school level education. They came to this country, but they knew education was absolutely critical for their 4 kids. And so what they couldn't necessarily do with their academic skills, but they reinforced learning at home. And all 4 of their kids went on to college. And I'm the granddaughter of that influence. And so I just really hope that we as a board and as a school system with Dr. Brabrand's leadership, we've got to really be more intentional in helping empower the parents and let them know that it's not just the teacher in the classroom, that it's the messaging from a really early age with their kids. And it's okay if they can't help them directly with their homework. It's placing the value on doing well in school. And so I'm thrilled with what you have up here. Number 3 on the grant writing guide, I just remember from graduate school, grant writing can be very complicated. And so hats off if you guys have found a template that works. But Dr. Brabrand, I would say that I would love in a Brabrand briefing that you write to the board, what do we do as the 10th largest school system for grant writing? Because I am certain we qualify for a lot. And the little bit we would invest in time to the money we would yield, but I don't even know if we've put that type of staffing support in.
So we actually started down this road last year, and we brought in I'm going to get the name wrong, business and corporate partnerships, business and community partnerships. We had them come in and brief us, and as he said, they were like way up here. And if it didn't have 6 zeros after it, they weren't even close to their radar, and it was really complicated.
They were very new anyway to the position.
And it was intimidating,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What we found was a school-based resource that's looking for grants with 2 zeros,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it was very approachable and very doable
Excellent.
and can make a big difference,
Yep.
for a Title I
Absolutely.
school.
So that's excellent.
That's the differentiator.
It is. Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
Keep it small, tangible, and doable.
But it definitely triggered for me as a board member, like, good for you guys. And hey, what are we doing? Because
We did have some
Yeah.
specific recommendations actually around that office, as well as mostly that office actually last year in our report about their model is still very kind of hub and spoke, right? You come to us, we play matchmaker, right? It's the old-fashioned village matchmaker approach of matching needs to business, opportunities. Anyway, we were looking at that going, hey, why are we not taking the Match.com approach to this,
Yeah.
right? And letting people find each other and enabling that through technology. Because
Without
what
the
we heard from
subscription
them
fee.
was, there's only 2 of us, we're overwhelmed, we can't do it, right? So I think there's some, that was last year's
Yeah.
recommendation, but just to throw it out there again.
well, recommendation 2 about engaging our principals and vice principals in the work that you're all doing, fabulous. And number 5, again, same thing. I mean, building on that. And so my request, Dr. Braybrand, is that when this goes to staff for response, I would like to see a very robust response. We've had problems in the past where, this is kind of the timing and stuff, but, staff kind of have limited time, and so the responses are limited. But in this case, I want to see what are we currently doing in support of these 5 recommendations, and what can we be doing more of. To what Ms. Evans said, we can all want to embrace and support and enhance our Title I work, but you've given us, again, a roadmap to say, okay, so what can we do with intentionality? And again, thank you for really this great work. I'm so impressed.
We appreciate that because as we have distilled and better crafted our mission, we know that you can only do what we can give you. So count on the recommendations being very specific and focused, because that's how we can best serve
Not
each
always
other.
asking for a lot of money, right? Like, what can we do that can help solve the problem without needing more budget?
Ms. Darren Koufax.
I want to thank you for being here so late. We apologize for this, but thank you also for your excellent work this year. I'll be very brief. I think the grant writing guide, I was a parent at a Title I school, and I wrote grants as a parent for that school, and it's not hard, and the money flows oftentimes because of your Title I status and because of your diversity in the community. So I think doing something like that is a no-brainer. Thank you for bringing it up. As Ms. McLaughlin cited the statistics, that's something I consistently talk about, because 50% of my elementary schools are Title I schools, or even a higher percentage right now. And I talk about the benefit of parental engagement and to do it with fidelity and to do it with purpose. I think that's something we as a system need to really look at and explore, because I have several Title I schools that have great parent PTAs and things like that. And those are some of the more successful Title I schools because of that, because of the parental involvement, because of the parental engagement. I've often said, how do what do they call it? I think we call it rounding here. How can you translate that from one school to another? There has to be some way, and I think we could be more helpful in that vein. And so I would like to do that and wholeheartedly, I mean, all your recommendations, I think, but those are the two that stood out to me as something, one that's easy and one that's not so easy, but one that is proven time and time again within the system, that it works. You get the parents involved. And particularly some with some of our communities where there's I remember this one story and it just touched me so much, where you get them involved in a project and they said, we are new to the community, we're new to the country, and we have been given so much and now we're so happy to give back. Sometimes they don't know how to open that door, but when the door is there and open for them, it's they want to be part of the community. So anything we can do to help, I think I would want to our board and the staff to work on those projects. So thank you.
Okay, you've twisted my arm. I was going to leave it alone, but now two of you have talked about the engagement part. I got to give some of my own personal history and current successes that happened. My mother, I think she got her associates when I was in 10th grade, and just a few years ago got her bachelor's from University of Phoenix, but from a young age she pushed me. I came out of Loudoun County, and multiple times she had to, I told people one of our meetings I feel like a POW because the fact that I was the only one in the group, and you know what I'm talking about, my mother had to go in to justify me staying in honors classes that I was not in danger of failing any of them. So what that engendered in me once I had kids is you got to fight for them every step of the way. You don't do it necessarily with your hands like this, but like this. Or however, you got to fight for your kids at every step, and I've been doing it. And people look at my kids now, but they don't know what I've had to fight behind the scenes to get them to this point. Now, in terms of visibility regarding engagement, I didn't even realize the impact of being PTA president, being seen. It was a Chuck E. Cheese night where a grandmother who I thought they were her kids, saw her at a lot of events. She came up to me and says her daughter wants to talk to me, has some advice. And I was like, sure. She didn't really specify. A few days later, kind of coordinated, met with her at the library, and her mother was there as well, and she had some questions about the AAP process. She had no idea that my son had qualified or made it in, but just probably figured I knew. And she wasn't sure based on her daughter's score if, where that would play on the COGAT, where that would place her. She also had some other developmental issues that she was worrying about with her teacher. And the first thing I told her, I said, if you have questions about AAP, have you reached out to the resource teacher? She said, well, I've emailed her. I said, schedule a meeting, you got to meet with her. I said, she's guided both of us. She's guided us through both of the process with both of our sons, who both are in an AAP program. And a lot of times, I won't call it a magic formula, but it's just awareness and understanding. Our kids got here because we're doing a lot of things, and some of that trickles down and spills on them, and that's how it gets them to that point. But I said it's really important that you meet with her in person. An email doesn't communicate or express all the things you need to get through. The other part about where she had some concerns about her daughter, I said, talk to the principal. I said, teachers may not through an email understand or realize what the issue is. The principal's there for that. I said, have a meeting with her. I said, explain the concerns. I said, she'll definitely get on it. And she said, from her culture, they were not raised to speak up. This is not a Spanish-speaking culture, but they were not raised and gendered them to speak up. I think American-born kids probably have more of that sense to speak up than other cultures. And she says, I'm kind of shy because we always didn't speak a lot. I said, well, for your kid, you have to be a little less shy. You have to come out of a little bit for them. And that same day, we had an PTA executive board meeting. I said, would you like to sit in on the meeting? Because anybody's welcome to it. She said, yeah. So she got to sit in, got to meet the principal, talk to her, hear us just talk through business. But I think she followed up with a meeting with her. And every time I've seen her in the past, she's very appreciative, very warm. You could tell that it really made an impact on her role with her children's education. Her work schedule kept her out. A lot of our events are Thursday nights, and she works a 12-hour schedule, so she misses a lot of things because she works Thursdays. Tuesdays are her off day. She said she will switch her schedule so she's available for Thursdays next year. This was all just for me being visible. I didn't ask for it, I didn't realize it. But I think we sometimes underestimate the value of just being seen and being out there and how we can help engage families and just from that bridge to help them step up for their kids.
Thank you. Great story. Thank you very much for sharing. And thank you very much for this great report and the interaction and your recommendations. We really do appreciate that. And we appreciate the work that you all do on the ground in your own schools and trying to get all the rest of the schools and the parents going in the right direction. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And if board members will stay at the table, because I figure what we're going to do with the wireless policy.
Thank you very much for the...
There you go.
You earned that pulled pork sandwich tonight. I just want you to know that all of you did. Thank you.
Although we hate to tell you it's chicken.
Okay, still get eaten.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Darren Koufax.
Yes, Miss Strauss.
All right,
what is
we
your name?
return to where we left off.
You know, what is the, I'm going to take a vote because I'm very tired, but it seems like people want to push on. So I will take a vote. We have two choices. We can continue talking tonight or we can reschedule to another work session. So who wants to continue talking tonight? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who doesn't want to continue talking tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where's Ryan?
We're talking.
Okay, how many people who have not yet spoken were on your list? We may be able to try that.
There are, let's see who's still here. Elizabeth, Ryan, Ilyan, Pat, and Karen Keys. So
Not everybody's
we
here.
have, yeah, we've lost some people. So we'll start with Elizabeth. We're back to the work session, Madam Clerk. But you guys, honestly, I am cutting this off within a half an hour. I do not think it is productive after that time. So everybody, you know, right.
Well, there's really no point in me talking if Dr. Braybrand isn't here.
Where's Dr. Braybrand?
He's coming.
We'll take a moment till Dr.
He's
Braybrand.
coming. Dr. Abrams coming. He's coming. Okay.
Do we have to do a break in the video?
You okay, Eileen? All right, we're good. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, and I shared this rather self-admittedly vociferously with Mr. Plattenberg before he left. I am profoundly disappointed in this language, and I know that there is a belief on the part of staff that so what, it's our policy, not yours, and the construct of what's here as new language it isn't intelligible as a policy. When I read sentences like monopole sites will be, this is under authority, will be considered, first of all, will be is prescriptive, so it's a shall. Considered, I don't know what considered means, after appropriate magisterial district and at-large members, it's not appropriate, it would be, you know, the magisterial district and at-large school board members have been informed, I don't know what informed means, about the site applications for what, and briefed on placement. Is it, are they already being placed? Is it proposed placement? It goes on to the school board reserves the right to review and approve or disapprove any application. Well, based on what? Approve or disapprove based on what? There's no parameters. Prior to any government approval. Which government? The Chinese government, the federal government, the state government, the local government? I mean, this just goes on and on. And, you know, the next sentence is, you know, any subsequent meetings and or school board votes shall precede the planning commission. If what you really mean to say is staff will not take a recommendation for a monopole to the Planning Commission, then say that. Don't put it on the vote on us. This is tied throughout. This is not even sensical language as a proposal. And if the board members and the committee were attempting to convey something of what the desired consensus was, my point is that staff is our staff. They're our staff. It's not the school board office who are the subject matter experts. It's the operational staff. And if the operational staff saw this and said, okay, let me try to understand what you're saying, then it is incumbent upon that staff to work with, whether it's contractual, legal, HR, whomever it is, based on whatever proposed language and proposed direction that committee or that board member is working with, to come to language that is meaningful. Every place here where there's the opportunity to interpret or misinterpret, it is not the role at all of the Fairfax County School Board or the superintendent to ensure the safety and security of citizens. What citizens? The citizens of the world, the citizens of the nation, the citizens of Virginia, the citizens of the county. I mean, again, you're right there. It's not our job to promote commerce. None of that should be there. Under philosophy, we have school board. The school board shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations related to telecommunications facilities. That's not a philosophy. That's a requirement of law. It has no business being in here. So I am frustrated from the mechanics of this, that it seems to me like at the back end, the committee work was endeavoring to do something, and they were not facilitated by staff to get it into meaningful language to help us understand what is it that the recommendation is trying to do. What should be crystal clear at the boil down is, does the committee recommend that we change the policy? If so, what do you want us to do? Previously, it was no go on buildings. You're not going to install, and we continue to agree not to install anything on a elementary, middle, or high school building. But this all boils down to really the last sentence on the first page, which is the board states, and it doesn't say the school board, it's another nomenclature convention problem throughout this policy. But the school board states a preference. That doesn't say anything that wireless telecommunication facilities should, not prescriptive, not permissive, it's something in between, not be placed on elementary school property. What is the recommendation? Is the recommendation we're not going to go forward with poles on elementary school property? Yes or no? And if it's a split decision of the committee, then put the language in two different ways. One way, one the other way, and then let the board vote. But the machinations of getting through this as language leaves even the board at this table struggling to look like looking through glass block. And I do think that is staff's responsibility to help lead with the expertise in crafting the language. And if the committee can't come to a recommendation, then the committee needs to come forward and say, you know what, we've been hashing this over. We can't come up with a recommendation in any sense. And we should just continue on with existing practice. But it seems like it was all so amorphous, and that nobody wanted to really tackle getting this to be legible, understandable, legally sufficient as policy to drive whatever regulation is going to come out of this. I don't know how you could possibly begin to craft a regulation that comes from this. So I'm I'm frustrated that after these many months, we're in this position. I also do not understand why we're basically constructing a policy that is, from what I heard earlier this evening when we had some of the information from staff, we're basically driving a policy for one company. All of this time is being spent so that one company can place, as a for-profit going concern, can place on taxpayer land for-profit entity, and I'm not even exactly clear how much money we're getting out of it. And I hate to bring this up, but this to me feels like synergistics all over again. Who's tracking the revenue? If there's 45 plus another 10, who's tracking the revenue? Because I thought that we were having contracts with the telecommunication carriers, and now I find out from earlier this evening, no. Milestone is going off and making the agreements, and we're getting money on the back end instead of the reverse. So we're paying Milestone a management fee to go solicit companies. They have an exclusive. I don't understand how it's an exclusive. I heard originally it was from 2001. This evening it was like 2002 to 2003. Then it was, no, they got a recompete in 2013. But we have one individual company that has, a monopoly on all of our properties, and we're not even being clear in this potential draft policy about where we're going. So that was my frustration from earlier this evening. If the goal is to get to a decision tonight, my recommendation would be that we give, if you're looking, Ms. Darnat Kofax, for direction from me to the staff so that we can move forward, I'd say we put a moratorium on any existing applications because they seem to have come up absent the governance committee's awareness. I feel frustration for members of the governance committee that you all seemed to have been in good faith trying to get to language in this policy while in the background apparently applications were coming in, and so there wasn't even a connected synaptic jump between staff on, hey, look, there's daylight burning on existing policies, and you guys are, mulling about whatever you're going to recommend. So
I hear you. I just want to say.
Yeah. Okay. So this needs a lot more work. It is not workable. I don't think there's actually not much here in new language that I find workable at all. So I do think that there should be a moratorium if there needs to be guidance, if staff is looking for guidance now. And I think we need to ask if it's legal that needs to get involved in helping talk to the members on the governance committee, saying, what is it that you're trying to do? What do you want to recommend? And here's a couple different versions. And then they come to one or two consensus, votes to the best of their ability, and then bring it back to us.
Mr. Moon.
Okay. This sounds like deja vu of a naming policy discussion. Naming rights policy discussion the governance committee had over a long period of time, and then whole board having multiple discussions and not going anywhere. Thanks for hard work, the governance committee. Whether I should say that whether I was happy not to be part of that group or not, but thank you for what you brought. Obviously, that's inciting more discussion by the rest of the board. That, my take on this was this. If this is a unanimous recommendation from governance committee, I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to their work. They did this in good faith, all 4 members on the committee, and put this as a new business and then see where that goes. If there is a motion to postpone, then so be it at that point. If there are multiple amendments, so be it. Have those discussions. If there are motion to substitute, let's discuss that. And then if there's a motion to refer back to the committee, let's have that done. Let's get it done this properly. I know, Elizabeth, well, you're going with a moratorium. I don't even know whether board can say at a work session that now we're going to vote on the moratorium, which is basically suspension of the existing policy. I don't even know whether we can do that, legally speaking. So if somebody wants to make a motion at a regular meeting, that meanwhile, by the way, until we resolve all these issues, that we're going to suspend this policy, then let's have that discussion at the board table. Because I don't want to see this every time committee comes up with a recommendation, whether it's a unanimous or even a split vote, comes up with a recommendation. We don't give enough value to that work. Put that on, we're gonna do this open public at a meeting, that there's enough support for postponement, let that be done. If there's a majority of the board who wanna support the recommendation of a committee, let that be done. I think that's the approach I would prefer this board to take.
Okay, I said I'm cutting this off by 11:10. So there are 4 go-backs, and so that's 5 minutes each. I'll give you 5 minutes each, starting with Ms. Hines, and then we have two things on the table. I think, as Mr. Moon said, and Ms. Schultz says, there's 2 ways to do this. You either send it back to governance, or you hash it out at the board table, because that just it seems that when we do, as Mr. Moon said, it was deja vu. I won't go back into his language about the whys and wherefores, but I think those are the 2 things we will vote on tonight. And with that, I have Ms. Hines, Mr. Wilson, and Ms. McLaughlin. You each have 5 minutes. I am going to time you. I'm sorry, I have to, just because the staff has been here, everybody's tired, and I think we're not doing our best work.
Yeah, no, I don't need 5 minutes. I'll ditto Mr. Moon. I think governance has spent a lot of time on it. It's time for us to vote on it. I understand what you're trying to do. I'm ready to vote on it. I'm interested to see if people bring amendments. As Mr. Moon said, if there's someone who wants to postpone, then let's vote on that at the table. But I am adamant that we cannot tonight put any kind of a moratorium on what we're doing. Existing policy governs until this board at the table under agenda changes existing policy. So when you get a sense of the board, I'll be all for putting it to the board table to a vote. Thank the Governance Committee for all your work.
Thank you. And thank you for being quick. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Darren Kovacs. I think that the comments, I know that in my initial presentation, I think I shared the sort of desire for deference, but having heard the many comments at the table, I think there are enough questions and concerns that I think my advocacy would be that we, as the labor of love it is on the governance committee, take it back and refine it. I think that it certainly could use some refining and some clarity on it. So I guess my feeling now is that maybe we should pull this back and come up with a little bit better product for the board to consider at a future work session.
Thank you for doing that in 45 seconds. Ms. McLaughlin.
So as someone who worked on the naming rights policy as well, one thing that did not occur with this that as a hybrid, I'm going to tack on what Ms. Schultz said. We should at minimum have John Foster's department look at this. I mean, this is, no, according to Mr. Plattenberg shared this evening, no, this wasn't run by legal, and it should be run by legal. So I would support a hybrid of what was discussed by both Mr. Moon and Ms. Schultz. I think we ensure this has had a legal review for the language being sound, and then that people can entertain amendments. And I do think that also tonight there were some suggestions by me and Ms. Hines about just having some clarifying words inserted so people understand what we mean. And I think that would hopefully also come through with John Foster's shop. I mean, anyone who's putting a legal eye to this, and Ms. Hines started it off and did a great job of provide clarity. You can't have words in there that people don't know what it means. So to me, being able to have that, legal look at it, and then I think what should happen is it gets the revised draft from John Foster goes to the governance committee for us just to review and report back to Ms. Koufax, and then it's already been up for new business, and then we put it on as an action. So the question is whether Mr. Foster's office can do that in time for when this is up for a vote, which is, I believe, in a week's time. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it's that we have to put it up for in 3 weeks' time. Instead of next Thursday's board meeting, we would do it 2 weeks from then. Yeah, but I think we can actually make this work with some potential amendments, but legal's got to put their best eyes on this. And Ms. Schultz, I do appreciate what you were saying, because it was a little disappointing to me earlier tonight in terms of, Scott, we don't have staff, but we do have staff that serve the division, which in that case serves the board as a whole. And I shared earlier tonight, Bob Cordova, thank you so much for being here tonight. You and Tom Casey, I've had the joy of working with for many years now. I very much value the integrity and the great work you do, and I know you've been trying to be really good partners with us. So I'm confident we'll get where we need to on this thing, and that's my recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Malberg, with respect to Ms. McLaughlin's recommendation, when is the next governance meeting scheduled? June 13th, and then 13th.
And we could...
Which is the morning of Woodson's graduation, so that's going to be a problem for me that I need to tell you.
We could put this off for a vote until June 28th, and you work out governance to take a look at whatever comes back with legal. We were just looking at the various agendas, and June 28th would be a better evening for this to come back at a regular board meeting.
Okay. Ms. Evans and then Ms. Strauss.
Yeah, I'll be brief. As a member of governance committee, going back to the purpose of this, my understanding is that what we were trying to do was we're keeping these facilities off of elementary schools. That was one of the things that was our goal, and also to put more school board member involvement into the process up front. And that was essentially what we were trying to do. And I think this does that. I think that if the language isn't perfect, I think it makes pretty clear that we're keeping them off the elementary schools, and board members can bring it specifically to the board if they want to do that, and then involving board members. So I didn't bring my file tonight, I'm sorry, but my recollection is we also got some more specifics from Mr. Plattenberg about exactly how this would work, didn't we? And I don't see that posted, and perhaps that would help the board because we got the reg that went with it. So I think the board would be helped by seeing the reg, because that provides more specificity.
Yeah, you weren't here at the beginning, and
sorry.
but no, that's okay, because the beginning was a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
I stated exactly what you stated, that was the intent of the policy, and the policy does state that, even if the language isn't perfect, or that some people don't think it's perfect. And he did talk about concurrently working on the reg, but yes, we haven't seen that.
I think that might give a
Seen
little
that
bit
as
more
well.
comfort if we had the reg in front of us too. I think we should move forward, whether we want to delay it by a meeting or not. I don't have strong feelings about that, but I do think that we need to wrap this one up. So
I agree. All right,
Ms.
Ms.
Mr.
Strauss.
Kovacs, I
Yeah.
would also recommend that not only getting whatever's in the reg, but also the 2232 process, because that was also, there were questions about what the planning commission has to go through. And I think it would be important for the board to understand all of that. So we are at 11 o'clock. What I'm hearing from board members is that this goes to legal, comes back to governance, you all do whatever. We have, make sure that we have all the information.
Well, that was
And
one
then-
of three options.
Okay.
That was one of three options. I would prefer to vote on everything that was here. So that was Ms. McLaughlin's option. There was also Ms. Schultz's option of.
I'm not, let me clarify, on a moratorium, I'm not saying that we have to take the vote tonight. If we need to take the vote in a formal setting when the rest of our colleagues are present, I'm fine with that, but.
All right, so I'll take yours off the table right now.
But the goal is that if we're being forced into a decision tonight, I can't support what's here, and I would, and if staff is looking for, if they're requiring our, direction from us, that's all I'm saying. So I'm not asking for a vote on that per se.
Mr. Moon, I know your advocacy was to just take it to the board on the
But
regular schedule.
at this point in time, I will agree with
Ms. McLaughlin's amendment?
McLaughlin's,
Okay. All right,
suggestion
so
that
that's-
take it to John Foster's shop to see whether everything is in correct order, legally speaking, not changing the policy itself, and the governors take a look. As long as we don't have to schedule another work session by the full board before we vote on the second meeting. At the second meeting in June, anything can happen. Somebody can make a motion. Anything can happen. So we're not making decisions tonight, folks.
All right,
We
it
haven't-
seems
And
like
maybe
we
you
ha-
could
it's
solicit, if there are any of us that have comments that could help facilitate this being even faster, you could certainly solicit feedback from us.
Absolutely. We will welcome preemptive looking at it once John Foster looks at it. So the board is in agreement with that. That's what we will do. We will send it to legal for their review. The governance committee somehow will take a cursory look at it. I don't know if there will be a meeting. There it may be done by emails and conversations. And then we will bring it to the board for new business on when?
New business on the 14th,
The
if possible,
votes.
the vote on, but we will schedule the vote on June 28th.
28th?
The last meeting in June.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify one thing? Going back to governance, the purpose of that would really just be, because my feeling is that John Foster's advice will be, I've kind of cleaned it up legally.
Right.
So here you go. It's not going back to governance for another de novo conversation about the whole thing.
I appreciate that. No, that was not my intent. I don't know if that was Ms. McLaughlin's intent, and now there just seems
Okay.
to be a difficulty with June and graduations and people scheduling.
Yeah,
This
got ya.
may not happen, this may not go back to governance even for, it can just be, we can send it out in an email, Ms. Strauss, and say this is what John Foster looked at, and everybody knows, and everybody can weigh in, and I'll be happy to be the point person to collect data.
Yeah,
on
the
that
key,
as the governance chair.
the reason I made the recommendation is just that once John vets it, what I'm hoping is he'll see what a lot of us saw tonight, which is maybe there needs to just be some cleaned up clarity in the language. That's all, and it just is important for us to look at it and make sure what cleaning up he did still carries forward the intention we had.
Okay, can we just see a show of hands if everybody comfortable with this going forward so we can schedule it all? Great, thank you all very much.
Thank you all very much. It's been a very long night. I appreciate your hard work.
Okay, thank you so much. Capitals 3, we won.